I want to do a big thanks to our sponsor, Privacy. So what do? Well, you're going to buy something online and you fill in your credit card number. Wrong! You don't. What they do is they autofill a virtual credit card number for you. So if there's ever a data breach, they can't get your real credit card information. You're totally secure. So that's a great service to protect you and make sure you're safe online. And on top of that, if you go to privacy.com/TYT now, they actually throw in a free $5. So let's do it now.
The economic freefall amid the pandemic is nowhere near over, with major companies now reporting tens of thousands of layoffs. Now, you're probably going to notice a giant surge in layoffs because of the fact that PPP, which was the stimulus program specifically targeted towards small businesses, is set to expire when it comes to some of its rules. One of the rules to get those loans forgiven was to ensure that these companies who take that money keep their workers on staff. They don't fire people, they don't lay people off. However, that part of the law is set to expire today. And so in the coming weeks, we might hear about more and more Americans losing their jobs as a result. So let me give you specific examples of companies that have already announced some pretty massive layoffs. Disney, for instance, said it will lay off 28,000 employees across its parks, experiences and consumer products divisions, amid prolonged closures at its California-based theme parks, as well as limited attendance. According to a statement, 67% of the laid off workers were part-time. Also, materials science company Dow said it plans to reduce its global workforce costs by approximately 6%, but did not indicate the number of jobs that will be eliminated. Finally, there's Royal Dutch Shell, fossil fuel company, said that it plans to cut between 7,000 and 9,000 jobs by the end of 2022. The company said that about 1,500 people have agreed to take voluntary cuts this year. Meanwhile, US refiner Marathon Petroleum reportedly began another round of job cuts. We're uncertain as to the number of the jobs in that case. And barring additional federal aid, US airlines are also on the verge of shedding more than 30,000 jobs. And so this is a disaster. We keep hearing these ridiculous news reports on CNBC and other mainstream media outlets arguing that the economy is doing so well, it's recovering quicker than we expected. We still have an 8.4% unemployment rate, and that number could actually go up now that the money from the CARES Act and the rules tied to that money from the CARES Act are expiring today, meaning that these companies who took that money are free to lay off their workers beginning tomorrow without suffering any consequences.
Yeah, and at the same time, we also have, I know one of the things we've been sort of anticipating for some time is what seems to be the inevitable outcome of more and more people being laid off is more and more people eventually losing their homes. Florida just today allowed the eviction moratorium to lapse. So far, it's not to say that more people haven't been being evicted, but it hasn't exploded as was predicted months ago. But some states are still just on the cusp of eliminating those moratoriums.
It's really frustrating to see this utter breakdown of governance during a time of crisis. And it's a time of crisis for so many different issues when it comes to civil unrest, when it comes to unemployment, when it comes to the economic anguish that people are feeling right now. They can't really rely on our congressional lawmakers to do what they need to do. I mean, don't get me wrong, Republican lawmakers will get right back to work when it comes to confirming a Supreme Court nominee. But when it comes to ensuring that Americans are able to put a roof over their heads or put food on the table for their children, they're nowhere to be found. We keep hearing about how they've restarted negotiations. Nancy Pelosi and Steve Mnuchin are talking again. And by the way, Nancy Pelosi, it's been months, and we keep hearing in all of these updates that Pelosi keeps agreeing to cutting the amount of money the next stimulus bill would include or would cost. But we're not really seeing much movement when it comes to Republican lawmakers. Real quick, I also wanted to give you some specific details in regard to the CARES Act and how that program really worked for these companies and why it is that they're now able to lay off so many people. The terms of the $25 billion in federal payroll support that bars job cuts through September 30th, expires Wednesday night. That means tonight. Meaning furloughs could start Thursday. Airlines are clamoring for additional aid from lawmakers to preserve jobs through March 31st, a proposal that has won bipartisan support in Congress from the Trump administration, but there isn't yet a deal on a national coronavirus relief package that could include the assistance. So we're hearing that there are bipartisan efforts, but we're not really seeing the results of that. And I also want to just address manufacturing jobs, because one of the other narratives that I've heard over and over again in media is that manufacturing jobs are coming back, at least the jobs that were lost during the pandemic. But as Richard Wolff points out, with evidence on Twitter, desperate cheerleaders for US capitalism keep saying the US manufacturing is growing in recovery and even booming. The data prove otherwise. Declining capitalism pretends a lot. So if you look at the data here, it shows that there is a bumpy road when it comes to manufacturing. You see a little bit of a rebound toward the end of this graph, but then that rebound is followed by manufacturing jobs declining further. Manufacturing activity has been volatile amid pandemic-linked factory shutdowns. A recovery is underway, but seemingly slowing. So that's the point. The so-called quick recovery that we hear about from the Trump administration has slowed, continues to slow, and that means more economic anguish for many Americans.
And remember that this is because the Trump administration followed a strategy of, okay, so sure, we're not going to do what's necessarily to save lives, but we're just going to reopen the economy because the economy has been hurting too much. And we said at the time, well, what's going to happen? The virus isn't going to go away. People aren't going to stop dying. It's going to spike. How do you expect that people are actually in the long run going to be able to go back to normal operations? And you can't. That is why we had the big second spike of cases. In a number of states, it's going up once again. 739 people were reported dead in the last COVID tracking project report. We just let this continue month after month after month at effectively the same level. And they really do think that if they just stick their head in the sand, everything will go back to normal. And for the richest Americans, I guess in terms of their stock portfolio, it's generally doing okay. But you can't make the virus go away just by ignoring it. And you certainly can't make its effect on the economy go away.
And one other thing I want to note is that many of these job losses aren't temporary. They're not temporary job losses. They're likely to be permanent. So as noted in Market Watch, in April 2020, 79% of closed businesses said they were closing temporarily, while 21% announced permanent closings. But over the months that followed, the number of permanently closed businesses have steadily grown, while the inverse has been happening for temporary closings. So by July, we saw the number of permanently closed businesses rise to more than 50% of the total number announced closings. So we're in such a terrible situation, and the media is just lying to people about this economic recovery. They're just parroting the nonsense and talking points from the Trump administration. And at the same time, we have a lack of leadership when it comes to the so-called opposition party. So it is terrifying, and this is really the reality of what we're dealing with.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.